While I'm thinking about it. There we go. All right. Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Mike McWilliams, upstairs to the right music channel, and I'm making my adjustments on the fly here tonight. I just literally just sat down, turned on all the lights, and I'm making my adjustments here, but I think everything is all right. I'm with you now. How is everybody doing out there? I want to thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. You spend your time tuning into other things, I'm sure. But you do spend time with me, and I do appreciate you doing so. So I just want to get that up front as always. How has everyone's week been so far? Mine has been interesting. Uh, you know, you say to yourself, okay, it's just going to be easy week, easy peasy, but it never really works out that way. It's always a mad rush or this, that, or something pops up, or you got to have this by this deadline, or this, that, and the other. It's just crazy. Michael Watts in the house. Ben Allmark in the house. All right. It's just, it's Wednesday and I always feel it's Wednesday and it already feels like Friday. That's basically what I'm trying to say. But I am here and you guys are here. Dewey, sir. Welcome, sir. How you doing? Welcome. Thank you so much for showing up, fellas. Means a lot to me. Well, I always like to just chat about random things going on here at Upstairs to the Right Music while we wait for more people to join into the live stream. Actually, this one kind of ties into tonight's theme, so it's kind of good. I actually have notes tonight, so this is not going to be off the cuff. I am going somewhere tonight, so I hope you do strap in for the ride. I do appreciate you doing so. But as you know, I'm always on the search for rare Japanese guitars from the 70s and 80s primarily. 90s will do. But I recently, as you guys know, got a 1979 Yamaha Studio Lord 700S standard. And at the time, there were I assume that this is from an estate sale because this is the 700 that I bought is a one owner guitar without any question. There was another one that I wanted, but my broker said that it got snapped up, and he contacted me recently and said, "Hey, it's back up again. Do you want it?" I was like, "Do I do I want it?" I guess this guy. I'm just assuming. I don't know if this. Don't take this as fact, but this is what I'm trying to piece together. Is it? I guess I'm buying from a guy who collected um, Yamahas, particularly their standards, and particularly some very rare ones. Uh, and as you know. I was looking at Strats, and that's the theme of tonight. Is I'm not so sure about buying made in Japan Fender Strats for this reason, and I do have actually several reasons that I'm going to share with you tonight. Uh, but one of the things about these Yamaha guitars that's very interesting is just the lack of there are some websites that are trying to concretely put together the history of these things because these things were produced domestically in Japan. They weren't meant to get out. They did get out and continue to, but all the information is in Japanese now. I have okay Japanese reading skills, and I have resources that can help me with translation. So that's one thing, but a lot of folks don't. And that's kind of leading into my feeling about the made in Japan Fender Strats. Because with these Yamahas, for example, the one that came up, I said, oh, by the way, I said, hell yeah, I want it. And so it's on its way. That's going to be the May unboxing. It's actually going to be another Yamaha and another Fender bass. I'm going to call it the Groundhog Day effect unboxing because it's essentially identical as the last month's, except for this Yamaha is the Studio Lord 450S from 1982. And, uh, just to cut through this opening bit, because I see more people are starting to come into the live stream, so I can get to the main of this, the main course, so to speak. But even with those Yamahas, there's a complicated history, and even within Japan, the history of the production of these guitars is very clouded. Now, as I said, there are websites and resources. Actually, I'm reaching out to one guy right now and saying, "Hey, I've got a couple in." Frederick Rogers in the house. Welcome from the Emerald Isles. Welcome, sir. That I'm reaching out to and saying, "Hey, I've got one of these and another one coming in, um, and I'd like to add to the documentation of that program so that it brings a little clarity." For example, on his website, again, he's stating that the fretboards on those are ebonies on the 700s, but they're not, as I've talked about. And so, but a lot of stuff, like for example, this 450, to cut through the chase with that, the top Yamahas that people really, really, really consider to be, it's like they said to Orville by Gibson, "Here, hold my beer." They really started producing these standards that were just nothing short of excellent, and certainly your best bet. Actually, in some cases, and not in some cases, in a lot of cases, better than the famed Orville by Gibson guitars. And the Studio Lord 700, of course, that I have sitting in the next room, that would be an example of that. And the SL 450 is a precursor to the Lord Player. Now, the lower players are considered to be the one that said to Orville, "Hold my beer." And those are some very hard guitars to come by. To find the Lord Player series guitars from Yamaha is a rare thing. However, there is the 450 and the 550 line that came out in 1982 to around mid 1983. And as it turns out, it's been pointed out by a collector of these guitars that the 82 450 SL Studio Lord that I just bought is the same exact guitar as the later on, not too later on, actually the very next year, 83 84 Lord Player 450. They're the same guitars. They just changed the name. And so that little bit of information getting out there for the guys who are collecting those, that's interesting because now they can get a 450 SL and know it's the same as same exact same guitar, materials, everything same. But these are the nuances is where I'm trying to get to, where I'm going somewhere with this tonight, of weeding when you talk about a guitar safari, you're not just on the back of the truck, shooting that stuff. No, you got to beat the bush, so to speak. And also you have to be extremely knowledgeable about the nuances of these, because there's a Yamaha Studio Lord 400, which actually precedes, which comes after the Studio Lord 700 series, but before the Studio Lord 450s. The 400 is a bolt-on neck guitar. Okay, so you would get a SL 400 and you would think, oh, it's like a 450, but it's not. They're two totally different things. And again, and you can trick yourself. And there have been people who bought something and it ended up not being what they thought it was because, well, it's tricky. It's a murky waters, and you really have to research. And when it comes to made in Japan Fender Strats, this is another one of those things that I guess you could say that, knowledge is good, but you can burn yourself out on this stuff too. And that's a whole Fender Strats made in Japan ones are a whole nother, as I like to say here, a rabbit hole. And it is quite a rabbit hole with many, many, many different, branches to it once you get down into it. And I was presented with a choice between two made in Japan Strats from the 80s. versus this 82 Yamaha, and I went with the Yamaha instead. I mean, I wanted anyway. I wanted both of those. In fact, it came up again. I saw that as Providence, but I was debating between those three guitars, two Strats and the Yamaha, and I went with the Yamaha. And you would say, "Wait a minute, Mike. Well, Fender, and these were Fender Strats, by the way, both of them, Fender Japan." You'd say, "Why did you do that, Mike?" And I said, "Be," and I would say to you, because um, made in Japan. Okay, let me start from the beginning. I got my notes here. So I was looking at a Yamaha. Actually, I said one was a Fender. I'm sorry. Let me correct that. One was a Fender Strat. The reissue 57 with the USA made pups in it. And that's one of the biggest, by the way, I jumped the gun a little bit. One of the biggest complaints in general about the made in Japan Strats is the pickups. They'll say, well, the wood's good, the necks are actually great, everybody loves the necks, but the pickups are the things that everybody wants to swap out. And I guess in this period that this particular reissue came out, they were sending parts. This is during the time when they were sending parts from the States over to Japan. We'll talk about that in a minute. So there you go. You didn't have the stigma of having bad pickups in it. You actually had the same, and I looked at that and I thought about that. But again, okay, I'm jumping ahead of myself. The other one was a Yamaha 450S, which is called a Super Rocker. Now, again, this is an excellent guitar that is on par. Um, DC, hey, word up to you. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for showing up to the party. Welcome. Talking about Strat made in Japan Strats tonight. And Beautiful guitar, ash body, maple neck. The headstock on it is the Fender 60, 65, period CBS, pre-CBS headstock to a T without any question. Beautiful guitar. Um, but the question comes about what kind of value would it have to me in terms of finding the right buyer for it? Now, I'm going to talk tonight a lot about things from my perspective as being an importer. However, this really is meant to be a lesson to those out there who are trying to reach out and thinking about getting made in Japan Fenders. Whether it's tonight, we're going to talk about Strats, but this applies to the across the line Jazz Masters, Telecasters, whatever. And uh, I'm always keeping an eye on, is this something that I can move? However, in that question, I do have to know what players want, what they desire, and what the market kind of says about these things. So there's that. So let me frame tonight in that. So now, interestingly enough, um, this all came about. Let's do a little bit of backtracking history, because CBS. By the way, when you talk about CBS buying Fender, this is the same CBS that brings you "I Love Lucy" and Star Trek at that time. Just to put that in the United States, that's the TV production studio, CBS, actually channel as well. Um, Especially now you're talking about in 1965. So they bought it out, Fender, Leo Fender, kept him on as an advisor. But that is when things started to get interesting for the Japanese market. Now, Tokai, Greco, and Yamaha, in that period of time from 65 up until the 80s, were producing their own versions of these guitars. Now, again, these were produced by Kanda Shukai and Yamano Ogaki. These were the two principal producers of the Tokais or Grecos, um, and some of the Yamahas at that time. Later on, Fujigen got involved as being the principal player, but at this time, these were the guys that were pumping these guitars out, and that's why I said you have the Yamaha 450 Super Rocker, which which is an ash body, maple neck, just sunburst. It was a beautiful guitar. I'm still considering it, just not for this month. We'll see. Um, but again, to find somebody to move that to, they would have to really know that market. They'd have to, they'd have to really appreciate that. And for them to appreciate that, which applies to the players out there, the guys who just buying who are interested in, you would have to dip your toe into trying one. And again, since there's such a big quagmire out there when it comes to these instruments, where they were produced, the quality of production, which ones are good, which ones are bad, when did it really fall off, is something that, a lot of people are hesitant to do. So they kind of leave it alone unless it shows up at their local shop. It just so happens, hey, we got a made in Japan Strat and wanted to try it out. And then once they try it, they're like, oh, this is great. And then they may reach out and start buying more, ordering more. But this still is the prevailing view, is that they are good, great guitars, but it's easier to get a made in Mexico or, of course, an American made one because you don't have to import it in from Japan. So it's just not. It still hasn't really has. It's a niche market, is what I'm trying to say. Now, the quality dip that happened with CBS guitars, by the way, contributed to the Japanese makers kind of stepping in and filling in that void with quality. And American players at that time that got their hands on it usually got them through the military. And I think we've hit upon that a few times here. And so they started getting it primarily through Southern California, and they started making their way across the states and into Canada and places like that, and the UK. And so that began this idea in CBS's head, hey, if we can't beat them, let's join them. And they reached out to Fuji again and said, hey, could you guys produce um, are pretty much all, I think, yeah, I don't know if there's anything in their line they didn't cover. Pretty much our whole line of guitars while we're moving factories, because we're getting ready to close down this factory and we're moving to a new one. So they're closed down the old factory and moving to their new one. And during that time, it was Fujigen that was actually producing most of the Strats. There's a period of time there, about a year and a half, where even USA parts were being used, and some of those were being shipped back to the States, and those were going out to dealers, but they were actually being put together in the States. And again, like I said, it's all these backstories and these twists and turns that gets into, okay, so what's a good one? Well, it's primarily the 80s Strats and Tellys and Jazz Masters that you really want to buy, just to cut through the chase if you're really interested in buying a made in Japan guitar, and only the 80s. If it's an 80s, that I wouldn't stray from that. And why is that? Um, now, so that green light was given for basically also to the other guys, Tokai, as I mentioned before, Graco, Yamaha, etc. They kind of gave them the green light to go ahead and start continuing to produce the stuff that they were doing, that it seeded even or was as good as the stuff that Fujigen was officially pumping out, the official Fender Strats, for example, as opposed to the super stringy, the silver stringy, the golden stringy. These names, the super springy. You guys know that one. Um, this Yamaha Super Rocker, for example. Everything was super. Everything was super in Japan, I guess, at that time. And So interestingly enough, there became this proliferation of Japanese made Fenderish and Fender guitars. And you had to kind of wade through those. Now there's some gems, but again, just to cut through the chase, I would say that primarily that and the models change too. For example, uh, I told you that in the beginning, I told that story about how the Yamaha SL 450 that I have on that's coming over, shipping over, morphed uh, from 82 to 83 was produced, and then around mid to late 83, it morphed into the Lord Player 450. And they're the same guitar. It was just a morphing of the title there. And that happens again with these made in Japan Strats. Um, Now, Fujian no longer works with Fender, but so here we go. They were the ones that were producing, considered to be the company to go to produce the Strats, for example. Again, there's others, but the Fender Stratocasters, they no longer produce it because they have their own line, the FGN line. These guys were producing Fender Strats and other instruments, and then they turned around and started producing their own. So to be honest with you, a new FGN guitar really is going to be something at the top of the line as far as made in Japan guitars are concerned. However, that's modern. If you want to go back, you have to go back to the 1980s when Fujigen was producing Strats for Fender. See what I mean? It's a lot of knowledge you had to cram, and then knowing that, then you start to search, and then you start looking for things and see if they turn up, and always having that knowledge in the back of your mind, because they're not always going to turn up. It would be a few weeks into something after you read about something, or a month or a year, and then it'll show up and you'll be like, oh yeah, that's such and such. And do you see how much of a pain in the ass that could be? It's what I do. One of the things that I do. And it's a quagmire. Like I said, there's so okay, for example, um the ST57 500 basically means that this is a Strat. So ST is Strat, TL is Telecaster, for example, but ST is a Strat. It's a 57 copy, and 500 designates its price. So as a general guideline, if it's like, for example, the Yamaha again, even though that's a Les Paul type guitar, that's the SL 700, which means it was 700 yen. In this case, the ST 57, the 500 designates the Goma yen, the 50,000 yen, excuse me, that it represents. That's 70,000 yen. So this is 700. And so that's your guideline to kind of tell you, okay, so a 5 mon guitar is going to not be as good as a 7 mon guitar, which is not going to be good as an 8 mon. So in the price points you tell you as it goes up with that between the 5, the 700, 800, the quality goes up, and the features that they put in and the workmanship and things like that. And again, you have to study that. But what happens when you come across a super springy? What do you do with that? And how do you price that too? Because at least I know, okay, in 1982, this ST57 500 was worth going my yen. And then I can kind of work my way from there that what that kind of guitar would cost today. But a super springy, there's nothing I can do with that, just like the initially mentioned Super Rocker. I don't, I know it's a quality guitar. It is one of the best looking non Fender Strats I've ever seen, um, and yet I just don't know. I'm not so sure about buying made in Japan Fender Strats for these reasons. I should have said. for these reasons that I've kind of gone through a little bit here. And you know, the one thing I will say, and even with those 80s made in Japan guitars, so if you are interested in buying those, if it's something that is on your to-do list to buy, then as I said, the 80s is probably looking for guitars made in the 80s is probably your best deal. But remember that the reason why initially the made in Japan guitars were considered to be so great is because they were great for their price. In other words, as opposed to at that time, the only available ones were, of course, Fenders. And then you started getting the Japanese copies, and then eventually Japanese Fenders in. But it wasn't so much that they were better than, or if they were a one for one of a 57 in terms of that. No, a lot of plastics were cheap. Again, the before mentioned pickups, some of them weren't great, some of them were, again, depending upon what you spend. Some of them were made from basswood. They were like my Telecaster, Monica Butterscotch, that was a basswood Telecaster. Um, and that was kind of their downfall. That's why you don't want to go into them after the 80s, because in the 90s, uh, because of budget constraints, they really started tightening the budgets, and because the yen started changing and the exchange rate changed, and so they had to start changing, some of the materials that they used, and that's where the great drop off in quality in made in Japan guitars occurred in the 1990s. Again, a little factoid that would help you greatly to know if you're out there shopping for them. And and the other thing is that even with the 80s guitars, the prices are all over the places. There's the guys who say, "Oh man, this is the resurrection of a 57, Strat, that Leo made himself with his own hands." It's not. And they'll try to charge accordingly. And then you got just the guys in Japan who are the resellers. They're like, "Well, we got a whole warehouse full of these things." Well, not really. In some cases, they don't have very many. Like I said, that Yamaha just ordered, it was only available for a year and a half, and that's it. And this is the only example of it I've seen. But again, there's that. Ben Allmark, I'm looking at some early 80s made in Japan Strats on Reverb right now. They range anywhere from around 1,000, 6,000 Canadian. Yeah, they're all over the place. And you have to ask yourself, which is the point of that rambling, sorry. Thank you, Ben, for putting me back on track. I'm tired. I forgot where I was going there for a minute. Good one. Thank you, sir. Yeah, the point of that is that they're all over the place in terms of pricing too. So I don't know what to do with that as a guy who's buying it to thinking about moving it on. Because just because one guy thinks that it's gold doesn't mean that the other guy is. And um, yeah, there is the ease of it. Okay, I don't have to go through the hassle of importing it myself. Mike's got it, and I can get it from him, and that. But does Mike think it's it's such a great thing to have around because they're all over the place? And um, I would like to have an example. I'm still considering the Super Rocker. I'm considering it actually. I'm thinking about it because it's priced according. It's not overpriced. But really just to bring on and show an example of what I mean by 80s copies of made in Japan strats and stuff like that. So you can see for yourself what it is. And like, okay. The script of it is Fender script, and on it with the Fender headstock. So all over the place. So it's a minefield, and you have to know, well, why is it all over? Why is it a range between 1,000 to 6,000? On and what is it that makes this one so greater than this one? And is this just a guy who's selling it because, he thinks it's the best thing since sliced cheese? And so it's kind of a quagmire, and there's that. So the 80s is a sweet spot. The 90s is where the budget guitars really came in. My interesting that Monica Butterscotch was a 90, 92, 90. No, no, it was a 90. It was a 90 Fender um, Telecaster, but you certainly saw how it dipped from the 80s models that you could get in that price range. And so, having experienced that personally, I can attest to that. Is that so that the dip that happened in quality in the 90s is something to be concerned about. And so, again, if I'm looking at any made in Japan Fenders, I'm really looking, or Fender ISK type guitars, I'm really looking for the 1980s. That's the sweet, but from 80 to 89, and that's it. And then that kind of narrows things down. I guess that helps you out because then you can limit your research to the parameters of the stuff that was there, which is the Fujigen stuff. And so I hope that, and that is again the purpose of tonight's discussion, is for those of you out there who are interested to give you a little bit of something, food for thought. Now, another issue is fakes, you know. Um, Not fakes in the way that you guys think. Not chips and fakes, not Fibsons. I call them Fibsons. When it's a Fender fake, I call it a Fibson. Not a Fibson. It has to do with unscrupulous buyers in Japan taking old 80s necks and putting them on 90s bodies. It happened. Just like I talked about, in the States with the so-called vintage strats, American made ones back in the 70s. A couple of months ago, I was reading from a guy from his own blog talking about, as a luthier back in the day, he and all his other buddy luthiers, and there were a lot more of them back then there is now, I'll tell you that much, were swapping necks on taking this year from me. Okay, so it was a 65 neck and a 66 body, which to you and I, we'd be like, it's still in the same ballpark, but to collectors, that's a big no-no. And the same thing applies to Fender Japan guitars as well. You get an issue where you do have to worry about fakes, where they'll say it's an 80s ST 65, for example, and it won't be. It'll be bits and pieces of things they put together. And this is back in the day, by the way, too, as well. Ben Allmark, great idea for a video. The difference between a made in Japan and craft in Japan. Haven't figured that answer yet. Well, it comes in the year as well. The CIJs were, yeah. Oh God. See, I could go into a lecture on that, but I won't. No, actually, people have covered that. But again, that's another rabbit hole, isn't it? And is there really a difference there? In the case of some of them, no. They're anyway. All right. So, and then the final kind of thing is this realization. Um, Michael Watson, this gets complicated quick. Yeah, thank you. That's my point. Angus Ovid, welcome, sir. I judge any guitar by its quality. I don't care where a guitar is made, but how it's made. I've tried a lot of junk guitars built in the U.S. Yeah, but that's the point. Is that there's some good ones in Japan. Like I said, this the which started out this conversation, the Yamaha 450 Super Rocker. It's an outer body, maple neck. I'm sorry, the outer ash body, maple neck, Really quality parts on it, made in 1982 or so, 81, something like that, or maybe even 70s. I can't remember. Anyway, it's a quality guitar, and but you have to know that. You have to know what you're looking for to find that quality. It's there. It can be had pretty inexpensively. I've owned dozens and dozens of Yamahas, and they've all been superb, world class. Love Yamaha guitars, yeah. Um, and thank you, because that leads to this next point that I'm going to make. Once again, as I mentioned, once you dip your toes and you start getting into them, you find out that they're great guitars. Not all of them, there's dogs just like any other. But, but for the most part, is again, you stand a greater chance of finding something good if you know what you're looking for with Made in Japan. In tonight's discussion, limiting it to Strats. And Yamahas too. Okay, that's fair enough. We were talking about Yamahas. But speaking of Yamahas, guess what? There's still not a prevalent guitar out there in the market in terms of people wanting to own or buy them. Uh, I think what's that? Red Shaw, is that his name? Red Shaw did a video. Why don't players like Yamahas? And an interesting question. An interesting question there. My answer is this: your '60s and '70s guitar heroes were playing Gibsons and by extensions Epiphones, or Fenders and by extension Squires. They were, because that's what they were. They didn't have the Japanese Yamahas weren't available to them in the '60s. They weren't there. They were playing what they could get. And in the case of the UK musicians, they were super happy if they could get an American Fender. That's what they wanted. They didn't want to play the domestic stuff they had. They wanted to get that. And then we all know the stories of the Gibsons, and how players were swapping those between each other, like you trading them like baseball cards. They're literally trading Les Paul 59, 58, 59 Les Pauls and 60 Les Pauls like baseball cards among those players. Clapton, Page, you know, Jimmy, just all those cats. And so that's funny. They weren't playing Yamahas. So Yamaha didn't get in on that kind of historical place as far as an instrument is concerned. Now, interestingly enough, if you jump ahead to the '80s in Ibanez, they got in because all the shredders started playing them. The Malmsteens of the world started playing those guitars. So that put Ibanez on the map for shredders. So that helped Ibanez. But Yamaha, is just one of those things. Boy, you've written a whole lot here, Angus. I will read some of these. I think some of the newer made in Indonesian guitars are great. Indonesia has a lot of guitar making knowledge. Chord factory, yep, we've talked about that. Yamahas have never had the desirability factor. And I think that's because they are either seen as too conservative or at times too experimental. Again, interesting thing. The Yamaha SGs. I bought one that's '74 SG 800 that I bought for the Dutch guitarist here. That would be something that it would not be for me. I have to agree, uh, but it was an interesting guitar. Yamahas may have more pull with basses because, yeah, a lot of the time, like Norman, like Nathan West, play Yamaha basses, for example. And Nathan West is one of my favorite bass players. I myself come from, the John Paul Jones of the world. He's my favorite bass player in the rock genre. And he played, jazz bass, so that was good enough for me. But again, like I said, there we have, in my mind, I went not with the Yamaha, but because of John Paul Jones having a Fender jazz bass, that's what I had to have. I had to have a Fender jazz bass, and I always have until recently. Well, I've had two. I got another one on its way. I guess I can literally say I've almost always had a Fender jazz bass. So it sticks with you. So that does stick. And then, of course, if I had kids, which I don't, but I would pass that down to them. I would say, "Hey, son, this is our daughter. This is a Fender jazz bass," and it would stem from there. Yamaha, as it was said here by Angus, they haven't had that desirability factor. It's because of, again, they don't have that touch into rock history. They don't. But that does not take away from the fact that they're great instruments. All right. So again, you know, so that Yamaha, even though it is a great Strat and it has great bones, um, it is not a Fender or a Squire, and that's actually unfortunately points off for it. It's a Yamaha, and Yamahas aren't known. Yamaha isn't known for producing Strats. So you see the dilemma that I face. I know when I'm looking at a quality instrument. And it's my desire to want to pass quality instruments on to people. However, I have to again break through, a lack of knowledge or understanding, and that is only broken through again by my study, and that gets into. I'm not so sure about buying made in Japan Fender Strats for this reason. This reason is I don't want to load my head with all this rabbit hole stuff. As was stated there, Michael Watson said this gets complicated quick. It sure does. It sure does. I know enough, and I'm not going to stuff my head with any more, but I know enough if I see something that's interesting, then I'll jump on it. To tell you the truth, the Yamaha Super Rocker would be something that I would keep for myself. It wouldn't be something that I'm passing on, but it would just be because I know that it's a quality guitar from the 80s in Japan. Sweet spot. And late 70s, 80s. So, but would I necessarily be interested in buying it as a importer? No. No, because again, as I went through these reasons tonight, it's a rabbit hole. Now, if somebody came to me and said, "Hey, Mike, could you find me the best made in Japan 55, 56, 57, whatever, reissue possible," then I could, with some kind of honesty, say to them, "Yes, I could find you one." It would be a Fender. And Maddie Two Hats in the house. Welcome, welcome, sir. I was wondering where you were at. I hope you're well. Hope you've been well. Good to see you. I could do that with a little bit of surety that I would find them something nice because I have enough knowledge of it where I know I've narrowed it down. The eye of Scion can focus in on one period of time and certain models within that time, knowing, okay, I'd like to find one of these with Texas specials in it, for example. Well, I know that was made from 85 to 86, and it gets into that kind of thing. So that again focuses in. But you have to take the time to get this kind of knowledge in you if you're going to delve into these things. And as I started out by saying, a lot of the records, even the ones that are purported now to be the correct ones, still need a little correction. There's still some things in there that are not quite correct. Yamaha did court a lot of shreddy players in the 80s and 90s with varying degrees of success, like Michael Lee, yeah, and Gamble, yeah. Yeah, but Ibanez, like I said, because they looked over and saw what Ibanez was doing, they're like, holy crap, you know. Angus, I'm lucky in that I know enough about what I like to avoid the rabbit hole. I like a certain type of guitar, mainly Strats with DiMarzio. Yep, Super Distortions. Yep, we talked about that. I like Super Distortions too. Some of my favorite pickups are Super Distortions. I don't own any now. At one point, I had three or four sets of them. But anyway, but I still don't like them in Les Pauls as much as I like Anarcho 3 pickups. I really come down to the fact that Anarcho 3 is what works for me and my sound. But again, like I said, is that it for my notes? Did I cover all of that? I think I did. I think that was all the things that I wanted to talk about on that subject. And as you can see, again, like I said, it's quite a rabbit hole. There's a lot of stuff in there, man. You got to know, and it can get tricky real fast, and you can get burned too. You can get burned, and I still think, however, that there are very few made in Japan, even from the '80s Strats, that are worth more than 1,250 US tops. I'm of that opinion. That's it. Because there's no reason why an older made in Japan should in any way encompass in price an American made one um, even from now. It shouldn't. So those 6,000 ones, again, those are the guys who are like, this one was blessed by, Leo Fender when he flew over to Japan to pick out the woods. Nah, man, nah, nah. Yeah, you got price range too. Know your price range on those. What how much? And again, like I said, I wouldn't spend more than 1250. That's tops. And that's on the stuff that's, the super, good stuff, if you can find it. Anything outside of that, not interested. So again, guys, those are the reasons. I got an ESP Horizon in 87 700 with the case, which was less than half of what a Jackson Solos was running, but it was better than the Solos. Yeah. Again, like I said, guys, stuff is all over the place. A little bit of knowledge will serve you a long way. And I bring tonight's PSA to you just to give you some food for thought, some things to think about if you're going to dip your toe in that market. This Monday and Tuesday, when I was having meetings with my agent over WhatsApp and trying to decide what we were going to import this month, because I like to do it by the first week of the month so that I have it by the middle of the month. It works out that way. So I had to make a decision. It was go time to make a decision. And I was balancing on the decision between those two, the Yamaha Stratocaster and the Fender Stratocaster. And then, thank goodness, that Yamaha 450 SL came back on the market. I think you guys should see that one. Now, this guitar, the 450 SL, has the Gibson standard headstock on it. It's not the 61 reissue headstock that's on the other Yamaha 700. This one is the standard headstock for sure. And it's interesting again, just how that worked out. Because if I had done it last Friday or Saturday like I had planned, but I got caught up in other things, that wasn't available. And the fact that it became available on the day, just kind of worked out that way. And so, yeah, I'm happy about that because that SL450 that's coming is a very rare one. You can type it in, check it out. Yamaha SL450. They don't come up very often. And especially, as you know, I only buy good condition stuff. So the condition of this one is pretty damn good for a guitar that was made my first year of high school. 1982. I was going into high school the year that this guitar was made. Ben Allmark. There's one about reverb identical to the Kurt Cobain played made in Japan 1980 Strat for like 1,200 USA. So yeah, those real expensive ones were put up by Dreamers. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Know your price range as well. 1200 is 1250. Like that's tops. That's it. If you go any higher than that, then the crack is strong in you. You need to cut back. You're overdoing it. John Bond, welcome, sir. They tried to bring back the HM Strat. Yep. Didn't really sell well here in Canada, inferior to the original run. Yeah. And they'll try to do reissues and things like that. And again, you know, that's all over the place. It's a moving target. And I told you about moving targets. I don't like them. I don't like moving targets. Um, Phineas. I like that name, Phineas. What a nice name, Phineas Henshaw. I have never been a Strat fan, but have a lot of experience with them, 40 plus years. There we go. There are just too many choices you can get for 1,000 that are just better, more versatile electrical guitars. Yeah. Again, this is not an argument about the ins and outs of Strats. My uncle Carlton, Blues Hall of Famer, guitar player for Fats Domino, hates Strats. he owned, he got a Strat from the Allman Brothers gave him a Strat, and he took it out on tour. He said for about 6 months or something like that, and he came back and he gave it right back. He knew, and now that guitar is hanging in the Hall Rack Cafe in Atlanta. And he's kicking himself every day. But that's how strong his hate of Strats was. He couldn't even hang on to that one. That's a true story, by the way. No, this is more about again the quality of the rabbit holes that are faced when looking for Strats, Telecasters, Jaguars, you name it, whatever Fender. Angus, the best thing about the HM Strats was the DeMarzo Super 3s. Yep. Phineas Henshaw. My first pro guitar was an Aria Pro too. Yeah, a lot of guys. Most of the guitars that we were doing were Court Arias, things like that. Those are the guitars that I grew up on when I was a teenager. Aria and Court, 100%. I'm not anti-Strat. I do own different tellies. Yeah, uh, you know, my uncle is. I was indifferent to them until recently. And then I got this. I bought this 2001 Squire and Stratocaster, and you know, got it back up to snuff again. And I have really enjoyed uh, this as being my technically my first Strat. And so there's that. Um, Angus, Ari was getting some good endorsements from the Pro line too. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yep. So again, guys, there is that. This is really a PSA tonight. I throw this forward. Uh, my current only guitar at the moment is a $160 Squire with a tone zone bridge, and it's great. Doesn't go out of tune, feels great. Yeah, I love it. I love this. Again, I don't know about it being reclaimed wood or not, but it is said that these early 2000 Squire, these early 97s, these early 2000 necks are excellent. They are. This is the best feeling neck one of the best feeling necks that I have on my guitars, and I really enjoy it. There is no Squire currently that has a neck that feels like that. Of course, this has had the benefit of 23 years to get that part aged out really nice. Um, but there is that. Doesn't The price doesn't matter. It really comes down to the quality of what you got. Again, Squire is underrated. They just need to step. This needs to be set up out of the box. Yeah, the Squire's up their game. So again, but there we go. We're back to Fenders and by extension Squires, and by that, these are the prevailing manufacturers and the ones that mostly people pay attention to. And one of the reasons why Yamaha is not really, even though they're quality instruments, they're not really considered to be in the game like that. The acoustics are to some certain extent. And again, like I said, there are some players that do use them, but again, it's not really a big player in that regard. So there's that. So yeah, I've been, I've been listening. I was listening to songs and thinking about, I'm actually seriously thinking about playing live. I must be thinking about playing live. Yamaha is also the Angus says Yamaha does some smart chambering with their instruments, which I like. Yeah, yeah, their acoustic stuff is great. But I was listening to that Prince song, "Wouldn't You Love to Love Me." Now he never recorded it for himself. Eventually, he gave it to Michael Jackson as a song, and I'm sorry, guys, I'm switching gears here, but I got you. You guys can converse among yourselves. I know I'm thinking about thinking live because I was listening to this song and I started breaking it down. It was a song I was thinking to myself, um, yeah, I agree with that, Phineas. The Yamaha, that one of their big problems, and the reason why they didn't catch on was their marketing in the '80s was not very good. Wasn't very good at all, actually. If you compare it to some of the other stuff that was going on at the time, Ibanez, Fender, for example, that were doing, Yamaha just was too sedate, I guess is what you would call their advertising. And again, they kind of stabbed themselves in the foot. Anyway, getting back to listening, I was listening to Prince's "Wouldn't You Love to Love Me," which is a very simple song. It starts out, it's just got a simple bass line to it. And like that. And I like it because it's when you love to love me, wouldn't you? But it turns to this beautiful, wouldn't you love to be with me alone? Wouldn't you like to call me your very own? I really like that change that he does in it. And then the disco that goes into it. So I think I'm thinking about playing live again, guys. I was listening to that song and breaking it down, and I'm thinking about doing an arrangement on it if I did go live again. Because I kind of got depressed by the last live stream that we did. That song should have been a hit for Prince, but he never released it. It could, yeah. Actually, Prince wrote that song in 1976, 77 when he was doing demos in Minneapolis. He wrote that song when he was in high school. And, the chord changes, that chord change is very 70s. And to resolve to that, and then go back into the verse. But he wrote that when he was 17, 18 years old, and did the original demo. Now he recorded different versions of it over the years before he eventually gave it to Taja Seville for her album, her debut album. But anyway, I was thinking about it. And that lets you know I'm looking at stuff because I on my live stage I do like to do at least one cover song. I don't want to. I like doing my. I have enough of my material where I could do a 3 or 4 hour set of just my own material without repeating the same thing twice. But I'm looking at cover songs. I'm thinking about, and I have a female drummer in mind that I like. I went to go see her, and I have to have a female drummer. I've decided. I don't get along with male drummers. I've decided, so I'm gonna get a girl drummer this time. I got a girl I'm interested in, so I am actually seriously thinking now. I'm in that phase where I'm starting to put the pieces together. because that last live stream depressed me about the AI thing. How the AI music basically took away my ability to write jingles, and I didn't like that. And one thing they can't take away from me is my ability to play live. So if I have any salt left in me, which I think I do, I should still be doing that. I don't know. I should get back to that. I should get back to playing live again. Phineas, the choices for studio guys. Yep, the G50 1 by 12 was the amp of choice. Yeah, Prince actually played. I forget a Mark III, or did he play a Mark IV? Anyway, are all Stratnecks interchangeable? Japanese, Mexican, Japanese, and American. Yeah, they are to a certain extent, and not. Again, that's all over the place too. I can't say yes. You This one I had to use shims in order to make it work. Uh, Not this one, but the white one. Uh, I say that Bruce Springsteen Prince played a lot of classic stuff on a Court telecopy. Yep, he actually played a Mad Cat. Anyway, Ben, I got a girl I'm interested in too, low. Good one, Ben. One out of left field. You got me. I, you see through me. I was playing Toxic Metal in LA, and it was a very chauvinistic scene. I'm old. Phineas says I'm old. I do not get along with most artists anymore unless there is good money. Yeah. Frederick Rogers, Mr. Rogers, Mike, I'm looking for a used Yamaha acoustic guitar left-handed, a good one. Well, I can look for you if you're interested. Hit me up, email me, and let me know. Um, Left-handed guitar seems to be one of the things that people come to me for, and it's not an easy thing to do actually, but it can be done. There are spaces that I know. They're the deep, dark recesses of the Japanese internets. I know. So yeah, reach out to me if you are interested. I can help you out, point you in the right direction. Phineas, Court makes PRSSEs now. Yeah, they do. So again, I'm looking into playing, breaking songs down and playing live again because, it's like that old jazz song. They can't take that away from me. And my live stage is good. It's good. Problem is that I'm going to have to find a guitar player as well because I also double on keyboards. So I'll be playing guitar and keys as usual. That's my usual with a bass player, a drummer, and a second guitar player. So that's gonna be a lot of fun putting together, but it is something that I am going to do. Frederick Rogers. I'm looking for a used acoustic guitar left-handed, a good one. What are chances? Yeah, the chances are good. Um, they're good chances. Like I said, if you're interested, I can point you, email me, and I can point you in places to look, um, if you like. Do I think of headless guitars? I don't. My friend John McKnight, who played the trombone solo on Party at Ground Zero by Fishbone on that recording, had headless bass, and I couldn't take to it. It didn't feel right to me. It didn't have the right balance. I did not take to it at all, and that was a court. Ben Allmark, if playing is what you feel like doing, then get out there and go for it, brother. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do. I do. Because I can do that. I've been gifted with the ability to not only to write, produce, but also to sing and perform, you know. And yeah, what am I doing? I'm in the city where certainly I can fill up a hall. I'm not in Timbuktu. I'm in Amsterdam, for God's sake. So you would think that I would want to. I don't know. I get, guys. I'm extremely. I know this is gonna sound weird to you, but I have a shyness to me still inherently, and it's not a stage fright, but it's just the reaching out. It's tough for me to reach out to people I don't know. In some ways. So I have to be introduced to people, and some of the people that I have to ask to do the introductions are people that I don't like. So there's that. Um, by the way, I don't mean to hijack your Phineas. You are not a hijack, sir. This is a conversation here. Imagine all of us are sitting in this room or your room, all of us folks, and we're just having a conversation back and forth with each other. There's no hijacking here. There's no bad comments. As a matter of fact, earlier Ben put me back on track because I was drifting. Then knocked me back on course again. So no, there is none of that, and I won't hear it. I would love you to always join in and voice what you got to say. You too, Angus, as well. Amsterdam is known to have a very open-minded music scene. Jazz is also loved there. I met many jazz musicians who lived there. Yeah, Ben Allmark, Phineas, we're glad to have you. Yes, sir. You're welcome, Phineas. We like you just because your name. We've never had a Phineas before. We might actually have to start to, to upgrade our our demeanor a little bit more when you're around. Uh, yeah, I like to hear what you have to say. This is a the equivalent of an AA meeting for alcoholics, but this is for gearholics. This is for it's upstairs to the right music at gmail.com. I'll type it in here in a minute. But for gearheads, we're here to sometimes this like last discussion was about that massive PR campaign for the Tonex One pedal, which I've already forgotten about. Because somebody else came out with ODR one anniversary 20th anniversary pedal came out for $179, and it's got an additional bass control on it, so you can control the bass end on it. So you got a full sweeping EQ on it now, as the original didn't. So I'm looking at that pedal now. I've already forgotten about the Tonex. Because the more I thought about it, I thought to myself, what a frack would I want to buy a pedal that I have to dependent upon a software update? Because I know that, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. After World War II, many American jazz musicians moved to Europe. Yeah, that's quite true. I know one or two. What does upstairs to the right music mean? I had my first recording studio was upstairs in my home, and to the right up a set of stairs. So it was the upstairs to the right studio. Phineas. Yeah. Cool. Dry as a bone. Yeah, it's getting hard to perform in a lot of places as well. So I should be thankful that literally 10-minute walk from here is the Paradiso, which I should be holding court at. I really should be. But we shall get to that. There are other fish to fry right now, but it is something that I'm considering. But no, this is we just get together here every Wednesday at 11 p.m. Central European time, and every Sunday at 11 same time, same bad channel, 11 p.m. Central European time. Here, let me type that in real quick. Real quick, upstairs to the right music at gmail.com. Is that correct? Yeah, that looks right. There you go. So you can always. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong. Anyway, that's me, Hoshi. Let me change that out. Hold on. Yeah. But anyway, you can send it that email. There, here we go. I'll type it again. Oh, it's there. All right. So just email to there. LA does not have much as a jazz scene as it should have history of Central Avenue. Yeah, Central Avenue was the place to go to. My uncle, again, Uncle Carlton spent a lot of time there. I'm in the same boat. I was digging through boxes and found so many effects. It saved me from buying a multi-effects amp pedal. Just a bit, just built a board with it. Yeah, yeah. And again, I don't want any pedal. The more I talked about that last live stream when we talked about that new Tone X1 pedal, I talked myself out of it eventually because I thought to myself, I don't want any pedal that's requiring a software update that I have to plug into a computer in order to make it function. That ODR1 20th anniversary, I bet you I can get a lot of good tones out of that thing that I would have been using the Tone X41 anyway. And guess what? It doesn't need a software update, or depending upon you to have a computer in order to load things into it to make it better than it is out of the box. See again, nah, nah. Yeah, simple analog pedals. So at the end of the day, after that Tone X1, just said I talked myself out of it. I was actually thinking about getting one, but then again, like I said, a few days later, oh, the ODR1 is coming out, 179. Hey, I've got, Noble's the PRE one. I've always wanted the ODR one to add to that, because they complement each other. That sounds more like something my pedal board could use than the Tone X1, to be frank with you. So, and the next thing came along. And anyway, I can't even get my hands on a Tone X1 right now because they're not available. They're on pre-order. What's up with that? I can get the OER one right now. Isn't that funny? They did a launch, minimum fanfare, not a lot of hoopla, not 50 different YouTubers flooding my box with, their nonsense about game changing. No, it was very subtle and campaign. And yet I know about it just the same, you know, something to think about. Just saying. Just saying. So that's it, gentlemen. I think we have covered that enough tonight, this evening. I think I made my point. So, again, just a public service announcement, a PSA tonight. What I think about made in Japan fenders and how, at the end of the day, your takeaway tonight is stick with the 80s and really, really do your research. Um, so there's that. We are trying to get to 5,000 subscribers on this channel. I know we can do it. If you guys haven't subscribed yet to this channel, please hit the subscription button. If you are interested in supporting this channel, the only merch that I sell is music. I am a music channel, so my merch is music. If you go to bandcamp.com and type in Mike McWilliams or Asanoki, you will go to my page and see that I have 2 albums there that are available for purchase. That money goes directly to support this channel and buying wireless microphones, lighting systems, stuff in order just to make it a little bit better. And support this channel that way is great. Supporting this channel that way is greatly appreciated. So if you haven't done so, please do that. Again, go to bandcamp.com, type in my name, Mike McWilliams, or Asanoki, and that will take you to the page for my merchandise. So I do appreciate if you do that. I will be back here again this Sunday. I don't think I have anything for my regular content as of yet that'll be coming out this Saturday. So it'll probably just be the Sunday show. We'll see. Uh, I like the my backup camera actually is not bad. So there's that. I will check you out, Phineas. Oh, the email address. Thought I put it in there. Sorry guys. Yeah, here we go. Is that correct? That looks correct. There we go. You guys can always email me there if any questions, anything you want to know. I would love to hear from you. All right, guys, it is time for me to go to bed. I'm wore out. You have a good one, and I will see you this Sunday. Take care. Bye bye. Oh, so on band, so at band camp, you look up Mike McWilliams or Asanoki. Ah, Asanoki. Sorry, guys. My fingers aren't working. Did I get that right? Yeah, I got that right. So please take a look at those guys. I would appreciate it so much if you do. I will check you guys out later. Bye bye.